and welcome to the Flourishing Center Podcast. I'm Emilia Zhivatovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here. Each episode features 3 sections. First is the Science Says section, where we summarize a recent research study and show you how to put the science into action. Next, we give you a research-based life hack with simple strategies for incorporating positive psychology into your life for greater well-being. And then our Practitioner Corner is where we interview someone who's out there living, breathing, and spreading positive psychology in their own unique way. Learn about how they're growing their personal and professional work and get inspired with strategies for how you might use positive psychology in your own life. Thanks for listening, and let's dive in. Welcome to today's podcast. In our Science Says section, we're exploring a new research study that has linked emodiversity, in particular of positive emotions, to inflammation. So we're going to get down on some biology and talking about how positive emotions can impact your health. Then I'm going to talk to you about the difference between basking and boasting or bragging. We're going to explore how you can increase your experience of pride, a really powerful emotion that sometimes people shy away from utilizing. So we'll explore that together. And then I cannot wait to introduce you to our positive psychology practitioner, Tanis Frame. She embodies play, joy, and creativity. I think you are going to love it. So let's dive in. Today's Science Says is an article that was recently published in the journal Emotion called Emodiversity and Biomarkers of Inflammation. This study is following many studies that have been done before that have demonstrated that negative emotions are often linked to higher inflammatory markers, and positive emotions have been associated with decreased inflammatory markers. Inflammation is something that we really want to be mindful of because many people think that stress leads to dis-ease or that the cause of illness is often people getting too overwhelmed, overworked. And what is actually the cause of disease is not that stress causes disease, it's actually that inflammation and the chain of events that get set off in our body with higher inflammatory rates is what causes disease over time. In this study, they looked at 688 community-dwelling adults ages 40 to 65 in Phoenix, Arizona. They followed these individuals for 30 days, giving them tablet computers to complete daily diaries each night. They drew their blood and assessed their levels of interleukin-6, IL-6, CRP, also known as C-reactive protein, and fibrinogen. After taking their blood, they assessed the relationship between their inflammatory markers and the relative abundance of emotions that they experienced on a day-to-day basis, something that they called emodiversity. And I think the concept of emodiversity is fabulous. They're trying to understand both the breadth, meaning how many different types of emotions are people experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and the relative abundance of that emotion. And to give you an idea, some of the emotions that they were looking at were things like enthusiastic, amused, proud, interested, calm, sad, ashamed, guilty, hostile, nervous. And what they found was that, in particular, positive emodiversity was correlated with lower inflammatory markers. They didn't find this association with negative emotions, meaning people who scored high on negative emodiversity did not have the same rates of inflammation, which I think is kind of interesting because sometimes when we think about negative emotions, it's just a strong feeling that you have. And we might say it doesn't really matter whether it's nervous or hostile or ashamed or guilty. It's just a strong negative emotion. So this does not counter the research that does show that frequent negative emotions are linked to inflammatory rates. What it is showing, though, is that it's not so much the diversity that matters, but with positive emotions, the broader the range of different types of emotions that people experienced and the relative intensity was correlated with lower rates of inflammation, even after controlling for age, gender, whether or not people took anti-inflammatory medications, BMI, medical conditions, and personality. This is exciting research because it really helps us fine-tune how we approach helping people who are already happy and well trying to get weller, along with people who might be in the negative zone trying to get back to the positive, is that we can think of the nuances of positive emotions and explore how do we build them individually. In positive psychology, we like to say that emotions are the spice of life. And if the only thing you're working on is trying to become happy, you're missing out on a wide range of other emotions that you could feel. And this study really supports that. The authors write that this research adds to the evidence that positive affective states are related to favorable profiles of biological functioning, which may contribute to reduced risk of chronic disease, while suggesting that diversity in day-to-day positive emotions may be related to reduced levels of systematic inflammation. I hope this research study leaves you thinking about your own relationship to positive emotions and what are the types of emotions that you experience on a day-to-day basis, and how can you increase both the breadth and the depth. For today's life hack, we are going to explore how to increase one particular positive emotion, which is pride. In order to do that, I want to take a moment to explore the difference between basking and boasting. One of the reasons that I think people don't allow themselves to take pride in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is sometimes they're afraid that they will be labeled as someone who's boasting or bragging. And I want to define boasting as the excessive pride and satisfaction a person has about their achievement, possessions, and accomplishments. And the importance here is the excessive pride and excessive satisfaction. And I've seen many of my students and coaching clients resist owning what they've created or feeling guilty that if they share what they're celebrating, that people will either look at them negatively or that they're going to seem like they're really full of themselves, or even worse, that they're going to jinx themselves if they talk about the thing that they have accomplished. Whereas research also shows that basking is an approach to savoring, and that when we bask, when we savor in this particular way, it regulates the emotion of pride. It actually increases our experience of pride, and it's a positive pathway to well-being. And I think that the main difference between someone who comes off as basking and someone else who comes off as boasting or bragging is gratitude. When we feel grateful for what we've accomplished, we approach it from a place of humility. When we feel that, yes, we've done this thing, and we're able to zoom out the lens and take into account the full diversity of people who have supported us or things that have gone into what we have created, we're just savoring it even more, and you're not going to be bragging. There's a quiet inner journey to the experience of basking, savoring. Allow yourself to let the experience grow and grow just for a little bit. And I think so many people are afraid to be excessively proud of what they've created that they don't let themselves take pride at all. So I have a hard time with this because one of my top strengths is optimism. So anything that I do, I'm on to the next thing. And when people will ask me, Amelia, aren't you so proud of what you've just put together? This program was amazing. And I have to take a moment and I go, yeah, I am. But sometimes I'm not really, because I'm too quick to be on to the next thing. So I have to take the time and create a ritual around honoring and savoring what I've accomplished. Sometimes this takes the form of a journaling exercise that I do at the end of the day, where I make a list of all the things I've accomplished, because it's so easy for me to turn into someone who lays in bed thinking about all the things I haven't done yet and all the things I need to do the next day before I go to bed, and wake up feeling overwhelmed by my to-dos for the day. So for me, writing down the things that I've done that day, my accomplishments, things I feel grateful that I got done, enables me to really savor in a way that is basking in what I've created. Or throughout the day, just taking a moment, a silent moment, to just put my hand over my heart or breathe into my heart center and just appreciate myself. And I appreciate the universe for the support to be able to do what I've done, even the small little things. I think this is one of the simple ways that we could increase our experience of pride in our day-to-day life, help us with that emodiversity that you just learned about in our Science Says section, and overall contribute to our happiness and well-being. Because remember, positive psychology is about increasing our experience of all the ranges of emotions. And with increased diversity comes increased well-being. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to bring you today's guest. Tanis Frame is joining us from Whistler, British Columbia, and she is a Thrive Catalyst and Play Evangelist. I can't wait for you guys to learn all about what this beautiful, wild woman does. And something you might not know about Tanis is that she spent most of her young life chasing Frisbees around the world, playing ultimate Frisbee. She is an 8-time reigning world champion in ultimate Frisbee, and has been following her heart, following her calling, and spreading joy all over to the people that she reaches. So I'm so grateful to have Tanis here. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here with you, Amelia. I miss spending time with you, so this is a treat.
It is. It's so good to hear your voice. Tanis, tell us about your story. How did you get to become a Thrive Catalyst and Play Evangelist?
Oh, chasing resonance and following curiosity, really, which I think is right there it's the key to me thriving and flourishing in my life. And it's definitely brought me here. I've just been, I think as long as I can remember, just relentlessly curious about what cultivates thriving in our lives and what gets in the way. And so I started my career, I was a geeky scientist, right? So always in the science. So the positive psychology really resonated with me. But I started out in biology and environmental science, kind of looking at how do we, as a species and all the other species on this planet, thrive together from a sustainability perspective. So I've always been curious about that and started my career there. And as I kind of went along, the more I started to see is, a lot of the science is there. But then it's this connection between humans. That's this challenge. How do we get the science into policy, and how do we as humans with different interests kind of make things work for all of us? And so I got involved more in conflict resolution and collaboration and facilitation, and even did my master's degree in that. And then people kind of feel that, oh, Tanis, you've completely changed your career, because here I am working with individuals to thrive in our personal lives, and leaders to thrive in their leadership in their communities. And I create opportunities for play and connection and thriving, like really diving into it. And people kind of feel like I've changed careers, but when you look back, it's always easy, right? When you look back, you can connect the dots and see that it's all the same. It's kind of, how do we work out, rather than conflicts with others, but how do we navigate these conflicts with ourselves, and how do we find ways that we can all thrive together? It's really fun, though, the way I get to do it now. Yeah. I'm just connecting and having amazing conversations with phenomenal people who are curious about thriving and rising in their lives and in their leadership, in their communities, in their businesses, organizations, families, wherever.
So you started a company called Thrive, and tell us more about the kind of things that you do within there.
It's so the company is called Decide to Thrive, and it's a community. And it's a community that basically joins in this curiosity with me about what cultivates thriving in our lives and what's getting in the way. And I spend my days creating experiences for where people get to kind of uncover, really get to know themselves, know ourselves, whether it's in our work setting or in our personal lives, and experiences where we get to experience tools that support us to thrive. So really focusing on experience. And you do this as well. You do this beautifully in how you train through the CAP program. But really focusing on the experience as a way of learning so that we can get right into action and into traction. So that can look like me doing a speaking engagement or running a workshop, or it can look like I run an online 10-month immersion program every year for 30 to 40 women. That one's just for women. And we dive deep in journey together. Or it can be a retreat, or I can be brought into an organization to run a workshop or to nourish their leaders. They may bring a leadership team together, and I'll come in and run a retreat for them.
It's beautiful. And I love so much that you use play as the catalyst. And I'm curious, what would you say to a person, especially as adults? We sometimes have a hard time remembering that we can give ourselves the permission to play. So how do you convince people that they should play and play is valuable and it's important?
Well, the way I convince them is to give them an experience of it. And so that's the joy, because absolutely, I talk about in the Decide to Thrive community, we have something called the playground rules, because I believe that when we decide to thrive, we play by a different set of rules. And one of those rules is that creativity and play are the way home. So I deeply believe that play is, I think a lot of us, when we're wrangling in life and not thriving, not flourishing, we've lost that connection with who we are, right? And I think there is no more powerful tool to bring us back to who we truly are, our essence, to remember how incredible life is and what a gift life is. Being lost in play brings us there. Totally brings us there. And so I love to create, as you love to play, is just create these experiences of play where we experience that again. And it's almost a remembering. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, this is what it's like to feel vitality and joy just in my spirit, in my bones, to not be thinking so much about what other people are thinking. Am I doing this right? Am I adulting well enough? But just to experience it again, it's almost this beautiful reset button and reconnection. Yeah, and I mean, there's oodles of science, right, behind what play brings us. But I'd boil it down to that. It's just really an opportunity to land back into who we are.
It's so powerful, an opportunity to land back into who we are. We are play. We are joy. I love in Sanskrit, there's a word that we use a lot in Tantra, that lila is like the divine play. And it's and the question is why do we dance through this thing called life? Like why does Shiva dance? And the answer is because it's fun, because it's playful, because it's joyful, right? It's coming back to our roots.
Oh my goodness, I love that, Amelia. Yeah, and amen to that, right? I think we forget that. What is it about? And I think you talked about permission and giving ourselves permission to drop into that, to just have fun. Wow, like what happened? That's something we need to give ourselves permission for, right? Work is so glorified. Work and accomplishing and achieving is so pushed and glorified. And I think sometimes we have this stuck in our heads that play, well, then that's either something we need to earn. So we need to do our things and accomplish our things, and then we're allowed to play. Or that it's one or the other, that if I play, I'm not going to be of service in the world. And being of service and having that meaning and contribution, beautiful, awesome. I think that's different than this work ethic where we just need to be pounding it out all the time. Because I truly believe, and I see it in myself, and I see it in so many others, that when we actually give ourselves the permission to drop into play, and to lean into joy, to follow what's fun, then, I mean, we become of the greatest service ever. The work I'm doing in the world now, so powerful and impactful, and I'm having a ridiculously good time doing it.
Good for you. I celebrate you.
Yeah, it's following that, right? Mm-hmm. But the permission piece is big. One of the first playground rules, the Decide to Thrive playground rules, is that we give ourselves permission. Because we're so often waiting for someone else, right, to give us permission for so many things, not just for play.
And how would you, if I'm kind of trying to put myself in the shoes of our listeners right now and thinking about someone who, saying, I give myself permission to play, but where do I start? How do I play if I've been adulting and leaving play out of my adulting for a while now?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways in. What's really fun, I love to we're doing this in the program right now with my gals, going back and finding photos or just reflecting back to you as a child. Like think around age 7 or 8, what did you love to do? Right? And to just reflect back on what brought you joy then that you've stopped doing. So that's an idea, right? And sometimes even just feeling into and remembering that, like I love to ride my bike. I had this red bike with the, the little streamers on the handle and the banana seat that had sparkles on it. Just thinking back to that bike and my pigtails, it brings me into that childlike spirit of playfulness, just thinking about it. But then I'd also just say, what resonates? Is there something that resonates? Like, did you see a dance class or a painting thing, or is it squash or getting on the mountain or, throwing rocks in the water? Just if you see something that resonates with us, it's like, I feel like resonance is this, it's science, it's physics. It reconnects us with part of ourself, something that we already know. So if something's resonating with you, I just say, follow it. Just follow the invitation and go and play with it a bit. Play with it a bit. That might be words too, right? Playing with words, poetry, writing, journaling, sketching, doodling, all these things that we don't value because they're not work, anything like that.
That's awesome, Tanis. Thank you so much. And I'm curious, what are some of the ways in which positive psychology has personally impacted you? I know you had a strong background in this coming into the field, but I know that you've also incorporated much more into your life as a mom and your own personal practices. And what stood out for you?
Oh, absolutely. It's really hard to pick one. The program was so rich, and yes, there may have been tools that I was using, but to also hear the science and different language, right, around it and behind it. Positive psychology comes into my personal everyday all the time and into my work all the time. I think of you and the group because some of the tools that we used will show up. Like just last week, I had a group of leaders and they're going into a time of real uncertainty. And so it's how do we navigate that? And some of the exercises we did, we really tapped into leaning into who they are as leaders, right? And sharing our stories. So we went back and did that exercise where we reflect on a time where we really, and in this case, it was with a leadership lens, where through our leadership, we really landed in who we were. And it was something all came together. It was this high experience, this celebration experience where it all came together. And we shared those stories and then reflected back to each other the leadership qualities and strengths we saw in that person. And it seems like this simple exercise to share a story of a time that we're proud of, and then to have others reflect back to us what they see as our strengths. But once again, it's amazing how powerful it is to have someone mirror back to you what your strengths and capabilities are and how unique that is, and how that we then looked at how that can lead us through this time of uncertainty. Because uncertainty is tough, right? And how do we navigate through that? So those tools of both understanding what our strengths are and getting to see them reflected in each other was super powerful for everyone's experience. But then also to look at, okay, those are things we can build as well. When we looked at everyone's different leadership qualities, seeing our own and the strengths that we can build to move forward. But also just I view one of my key roles is helping people see kind of why we are the way we are. And positive psychology and the research in positive psychology is so rich around that, understanding why we're wired the way we're wired. Why do we have a negativity bias? How have we evolved that way? But then how we can work with that. Because I find we're a bit just how do we bring that generosity of spirit to who we are? By understanding my brain is wired this way and that I'm not alone, right? I'm not alone in this. Yeah. That's a big piece is for myself and for others is creating this understanding that we're not alone and we're not broken or nuts and that there is another way, right? And so much of the learning in positive psychology just helps us see who we are as humans and why we're wired that way.
I love that.
Yeah, and to meet that with self-compassion. And also, I start my day, I wake up with a simple practice that comes straight, that's straight from positive psychology. It's our gratitude practice, right? But I do a gratitude practice and an evidence practice. So I wake up and I lean into just what I truly feel grateful for. and not the things I should feel grateful for. That was a huge learning for me, Amelia, is that I call it guiltitude,
Mhm.
like gratitude, not guiltitude, because I find we're so often guilting ourselves into what we should feel grateful for. And to hear from you and that learning that the science shows that that's actually worse for us.
Yeah, I love that you call it
And
guiltitude, though. I'm gonna have to borrow that. It's so true.
totally, totally. So, like, really leaning into what I'm genuinely grateful for, not what I should feel grateful for. Um, and then looking at evidence. Like, what is the evidence that I've seen in the last day that I'm on track, or that I'm, just to really look, because so often our brain likes to tell us the stories of where we're lacking, where we're not enough, and where we're behind, and where we're not doing, right? And so I start my day with this evidence practice of, like this morning, waking up, I'm going to get to have a phenomenal conversation with Amelia around positive psychology and all the incredible work that's happening in the world. That's evidence that I'm on my path,
Hmm.
right? And then I'm in an incredible community and I'm not alone. And there's so many resources and connections around me in this work in the world. And there's such good work happening in the world, all of everything that you're sharing on this podcast, right? So to lean into that evidence. And those are all positive psychology
Yeah.
tools.
And I would imagine well, I can empathize with as an entrepreneur, that is just such a powerful thing to reinforce, because there isn't a measuring yardstick that you can really size yourself up against when you are creating this. I'm remembering one of our interviewees from just a few weeks ago. I asked Chianti what her rules to live by are, her motto, and she said, "My race, my pace."
Mm,
And I've been hearing and repeating her voice in my head over and over again, because when you run your own business, you are creating the bridge often as you walk on it. There isn't this precedence of other people who have done things. I mean, you could look at what other people are doing, but very little to model yourself off of. So it's a lot of trust and
mm.
a lot of leading into evidence that you're choosing to make it supportive, that you are on your path, that you are doing your thing. So I celebrate your practice and the wisdom behind that practice, to sort of say, I'm doing my best and my best is good enough, and I'm going to celebrate that which I've done already.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it is a big piece. I mean, it's vulnerable being kind of entrepreneurs, and so much around the Decide to Thrive community is, it's not just a tagline, it's our mantra, it's our way of being, is that we're in this together. And I think as humans, we forget that. And as entrepreneurs, we forget that. As mothers, we forget that we're in this together. And so that community piece and reaching out and connecting to that, even if it's when we wake up in the morning and we remind ourselves of that, that's huge, right? That we're not alone. Because I think that's a story that gets kind of really reeled in our culture and in our brains these days, that we're on our own. And we're just not. We're not. And if we don't isolate and we reach out and connect and build community around ourselves, the huge impact that has. But yeah, I also love what you shone a light on there with this, my race, my pace. I'm doing a lot of work with women and leaders and men these days around time and our relationship with time. And in our culture, we're overwhelmed, we're behind, we're constantly behind, we can't catch up, right? And this busyness and our addiction to busyness in our culture, and shining a bit of a light on those shadows, that underbelly of our relationship with time and scarcity. And for me, I don't, if I ever feel busy now or overwhelmed, it's just a red flag, and I shift from that. That's just not a way of being for me anymore. And that's one of the hugest leaps for my clients, is the shift after working together, is having a very different relationship with busyness and overwhelm, and just choosing to live with ease and peace and joy. And that doesn't mean that we aren't rocking it in the world and doing huge things. It's just a different relationship with it, right? But this behind piece, my race, my pace, that's a way that for me personally, this time scarcity still sneaks in there. I'm behind. I just have these audacious visions and goals, and I know you do too, right? About what we're here to do in the world. And yeah, when you have these big visions and goals, clicking along day by day, we can feel like we're behind and not doing enough, not doing enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. And what would you say is the recommendation for people? Because I know it's something I'm so guilty of. It's people say, oh my gosh, Amelia, you've done so much. You do so much. And I'm like, well, I'm constantly fighting in my mind, not enoughness demon, or what I like to call it's like a little frog that lives in my brain that goes, yeah, but it's like I got so much done. Yeah, but there's this like other running massive list of things that you haven't done yet, and the work is never done. So I think of it as like a little ribbit frog. It's like yeah, but.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fantastic. I'm forever going to think of a frog now.
Mhm.
That is great. And it's true, right? Like, who can't relate with that? Who can't relate with that? And, you know, there's a number of different ways. And part of it is just shifting this relationship with ourselves and around this enoughness. Because I think, the whole good is good enough was never super satisfying to me. It always felt very much like compromising. And it didn't feel satisfying. It was more when I stepped into a different level of practicing, chasing resonance and synergy. So these are both physics concepts, really, resonance and synergy. But realizing that the way to do things and how we get from A to B doesn't necessarily always need to be this scramble, right? From A to B. There may be this secret route that we have no idea about. And to me, that's often synergy, that we can actually bring a couple things together that create more than they could on their own. Mm. So let me just give a quick example of synergy. One of the tools that I work with my clients quite a bit is about how we can create strategic synergy tasking. Because who multitasks all the time, right? And we even glorify multitasking. Yet, as we know, our brains can't actually multitask. We need to constantly task switch, right? So we're up, down, not super efficient. But synergy tasking is where we can accomplish many outcomes in one time slot. So, for example, in my life, if I'm looking to thrive, I know that there are certain things that really support me to thrive, but I don't have time to do all these things, right? Like time with girlfriends, having yummy conversations, exercise, moving my body, movement, vitality, nature, time in nature, and then play, of course. Play is essential to me. So there's these 4 things, let's say, that I absolutely need to fit into my week if I'm going to thrive. And so I need an hour for this, hour for this, hour for this, hour for this. That's 4 hours. How am I going to possibly fit this in? Well, I have a standing date. Every Friday morning, I go mountain biking with girlfriends. I don't have to plan it. I don't have to organize it. It's just set. And in 1 hour of mountain biking, I get time in nature. I get exercise. I get great connection with girlfriends, and I get play. Right? So that's synergy. And just this different way of viewing what we're doing in our work and time, and realizing that there's magical tricks out there, right? To create. And so I think about that in my work as well. I think, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I need to do all these different pieces, but maybe there's different ways that things can come together that I just don't see yet, right? And more often than not, that's synergy and connection with others, and how we can connect that way, right? And create something. So it's not always, we have this assumption that we need to work through and tick off a list of 10 things, but sometimes there's ways that things can come together. Yeah. And that's just been, again, it's evidence, right? And to look back and just to see how things can come through us and into the world if we just follow resonance, follow our curiosity and trust. And sometimes things can come through in powerful ways. Right? And our work can leap and suddenly reach a lot more people without us necessarily having to do all the things we thought.
I love this beautiful kind of feminine energy of allowing and receiving and listening and feeling your way through life that you bring into the world, Tanis. It's really, really beautiful. I want to leave our listeners with a strategy or tip that you would love to leave them with that might be helpful for how they can continue to, we've had so many on the call, but how they can continue to decide to thrive before we wind down our call. So what would you recommend?
What would I recommend? You know what? The simple tool that anyone can do anywhere, anytime. I call it, it's a really fancy name. It's called Stop, Lookup. And this is just something that I wove into my life years ago. And again, you and I share this passion for ridiculously simple tools. But all you do is you stop, and I'm doing it right now. I stop, look up, and breathe. It takes 5 seconds. And I really just invite anyone who's listening to play with this. Right? Outside, walking, the middle of the day, middle of the office, in the middle of a meeting, in the middle of a difficult conversation, or being really frustrated with your children. Stop, look up, and breathe. And it builds our capacity in the moment. Often it connects us with nature. Sometimes if we're looking up, even in the busiest New York city that you're in, I'm surrounded by mountains and nature here, but even if we're in the busiest city, we can stop, look up at the sky, and we connect and get that dose of nourishment. But it's this beautiful reset button, and it builds our capacity. It's this muscle that consistently builds, where we learn how to stop autopilot. Whatever autopilot we're on, it just stop, look up, and breathe. And it just gives us such a different perspective. Yeah. So I encourage, it's a really neat, simple tool that helps us just learn that we can do that. We can stop the race, the hamster wheel, the autopilot, even if for just 5 seconds, and reset our nervous system so that we can then step into our lives with that conscious choice of what we're going to do next. And that is deciding to thrive.
I love that. Stop, look up, breathe is the new stop, drop, and roll, right? We can just, if only we can get people having it ingrained in their mind just like that, it would be amazing. Tanis, thank you so much. Tell us, where can people follow you, find out more about what you're up to in the world?
The best place to find me is just on my website, which is tanisframe.com, TANISFRAME. And that's kind of home base. That's base camp for the Decide to Thrive Revolution and community. I'm also on Facebook, but hop to the website and there's some different resources there that might be interesting. And on my email newsletter, I send out various fun little games that we get to play with and just inject a little play into our lives as we learn about thriving.
I love it. Tanis, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. So great to connect with you, Amelia. I love what you're doing in the world. Keep it up.
Thank you, Tanis, and I love you. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll connect with you all soon. Thanks for listening. As always, we're so grateful for your support on this podcast. It is you listening to this segment that prevents me from just being a crazy person talking into a microphone in my New York City closet. That's a little bit of funny information for you guys. The podcasting studio is actually a walk-in New York City closet. You got to keep that on the down low. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. If you are, please open up iTunes, give us some ratings, because that is how people learn that maybe there's some good wisdom here for them to explore. Give us some stars, give us some feedback, and if there's anything you want to learn about, send us an email, info@theflourishingcenter.com. Check out our website, some of the fun things that we're up to. We have got some free courses up there. We've got some training programs coming up in a couple of months. Check us out. Let us check you out. And we look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great day.